This knife is a Cold Steel Voyager large size plain edge. I have made a review kind of alluding to it previously. I was knocking the factory pocket clip as it comes from Cold Steel. I'll stand by that criticism. I think the pocket clip as it is from Cold Steel sucks. However, this knife really merits its own review, especially since I have separate playlists for different knives in different categories, and I'll improve those over time. Therefore, it behooves me to have each knife get its own review so it can be racked and stacked in those playlists separately from other blades. Initially, as I first started reviewing, I was combining a couple blades, and I quickly found out that it's pretty much to everyone's advantage if I just go ahead and do a review, one review per video in most cases. That's not to say that I won't reference other blades, but generally the star of the show is going to be that one blade. And the star of this show is, again, the Cold Steel Voyager plain edge large size. There's a lot to talk about this knife. I don't remember what I covered in my other one. I don't have time to go back and look, so I'm just going to go for it. Here we are. There's different styles of Voyager. I do not have my Cold Steel catalog with me now. I'll probably do a review of that separately. The one I like best is this clip-bladed Voyager. To me, it is the most effective cutter. It's the most deadly, and just all-around preferred. This is a Bowie-style clip-bladed Voyager. Now, that's not to say the Tanto Voyagers are not awesome. They are. They have a lot going for them, and that's not to say the serrated model of Voyagers don't have a lot to offer. I think they are ferocious cutters, especially in the full serrated models. But for my money, I'll generally go, and I say generally, not all the time, but I will generally go with a plain edged blade. It's just easier for me to sharpen, and I think a plain edge, I'm going to use this Buck Bantam, which I just reviewed as my pointer today. I think a plain edge, when it is adequately sharpened, it will do any cutting task that you ask of it. Generally, an edge, unless it's honed very finely, is just going to be consist of micro serrations anyhow. So even a plain edge, if we were to look under a microscope, consists of serrations. Interesting. Let's talk about the blade on the Voyager. As usual, I'm going to run out of time, and I love the blade again. The blade itself is just over 4 inches. That makes this a very lightweight knife for the amount of blade you get. Yep, just over 4 inches. Specifically, I think it's about 3.4 ounces, this Voyager, and that makes it, maybe 3.6 ounces. That makes it extremely lightweight for having a 4-inch blade. Well done, Cold Steel. It's a hollow ground AUS 8 or AUS 8 blade, and I like hollow grinding on blades. I don't mind it at all. It makes the blade a little bit lighter. It will cut very nicely. Again, my general overall favorite is a full flat grind for the grinding reasons I mentioned in my grind video. But that's what I'm thinking in 2008, subject to change. But I do love full flat ground blades. But that being said, I love the grinding on this knife. Now granted, it just starts about just above the halfway point on the spine, going down to the hollow grinding, and then terminating to a razor sharp edge. I mean, this thing is hair popping coming out of the box. The Cold Steel Voyagers, they do a great job on it. By the way, if you want to know if it's hollow ground, you can just carefully in one direction use your thumbs. You can feel that grinding, and then you can feel the flare as it comes to the edge right here, and that's a great way to tell that your blade is hollow ground. It's kind of an indentation along this portion of the blade. Just an aside. The thickness of the blade is ideal, not too thick, not too thin. The tip comes on the swedge, unsharpened of course as it needs to be since it's exposed from the handle, comes to a relatively reinforced tip, I think adequate for both tactical, i.e. emergency defensive use, and also EDC use. Nice stamping of the Voyager namesake on the right hand side of the blade. And how's those thumb studs while we're here? I love Voyager thumb studs. I think they're very nice. They have sharp ridges in them, nicely terraced. It's easy to get nice traction on a Voyager thumb stud. And that brings us to the deployment. And the deployment on pretty much every Voyager I've ever had, at least on the large sizes and on up, they just come out wicked fast. They're fast deploying knives. I just love that. They're easy to come out. In fact, they're probably one of the fastest 100% Zytel handled knives that I've seen, other than perhaps a Benchmade Ascent, which I think is also pretty darn fast. Now that's amazing because this is a pinned handle design. In other words, we don't have the capability to adjust the pivot point on these Voyager series knives. They're just pinned, so you're going to have to live with that. But like most of the pin models I've seen, they get it right and it's not a factor. You generally won't be unhappy with the way that the blade is. And that brings us to lockup. How is the lockup on a cold steel Voyager? Well, this is not a heavy duty knife. This is not a knife which I found out in the woods that you want to do a lot of heavy duty chopping with. Because another Voyager I had got some wiggle in it up and down as I chopped in wood with it. So not real great that way. But as it comes from the factory, they lock up very tight, side to side, up and down. Generally in a Voyager, you're not going to have any play at all. They're just tight. There's no thumb ramp on a Voyager. Some would see that as a downside, and I might agree with that if you're planning to do a lot or maybe employ this knife in a primary defensive or offensive knife role. Generally, we want that thumb ramp to prevent ingress of our hand across the blade, thus cutting our tendons. So I'm with that. There is some jimping in the Zytel portion only. There's none in the steel. Shame on Cold Steel for doing that. They should have jimped this right here. If they're not going to give us a thumb ramp, for crying out loud, jimp this. It's not going to cost you but what, 25 cents to cut some cuts in there. There's a lot of other knife makers that I've shown you that get that, and they've done it at least in some form along the top ridge of the knife. So I sure wish Voyager had it. That brings us to the handle. And the reason the Voyager, at least the large size, oh, actually all of them, the reason they're so light is because, thank you, Cold Steel, at least as of 2008, has avoided putting those friggin' steel liners in the knife. And if we look inside this knife, indeed it's 100% Zytel, i.e. FRN. There's no stainless steel ruining this otherwise very lightweight, very fast design. I like the checkering on the Zytel. It's very functional. It's akin to maybe Spyderco's Volcano grip. It's kind of a raised diamond pattern that you can see here. Not too bad. I wish they kind of continued around the bottom, but that's okay. This is a lock back, not a liner lock design, and therefore I think it's pretty darn strong. Cold Steel talks a lot about the strength of its lockbacks. It tests them, and I don't believe it's hype. I think it's real. I don't think they lie at all on any of that. I think they, indeed, this thing can withstand a lot of abuse. What do you know? We got a lanyard hole in the back, and it's big enough to be functional. That's good. Can we use this one as a Kubotan? Maybe an impact device? Sure we could. We reverse it like this, smack the bad guy. Yeah, that's nice. Now, one of my biggest criticisms on the Voyager series as a whole is their stupid pocket clip that it came with from the factory. And I will say that the Cold Steel Voyager Large, I've already have a different video on the medium size, is an outstanding lightweight tactical or EDC knife with a caveat. And the caveat is that you have to fix the pocket clip. And that's why I haven't shown you until now. I fixed this pocket clip, and that's how I did it. If there's interest, I may show you a video on exactly how to do this. But what I've done is I sanded, just like I told you in my medium-sized Cold Steel Voyager video. I kind of went over this. I sanded these in between the grooves of these diamond patterns, and I epoxied it with JB Weld. Let it dry overnight, then I fine sanded it, contouring it to the handle, and then I painted it matte black with Krylon. Also, I've taken this clip off and reprofiled it, and I've also spoke to that in some other Cold Steel videos. And that makes this clip much nicer. Granted, that clip is mounted too darn low on the handle. I sure wish it was mounted up here, but once you reprofile it, i.e. cut this portion off, sand it, and make it smooth, it's actually a pretty decent clip, and it's blackened. And I've been carrying this Cold Steel Voyager with my clip modification, and I will tell you, I absolutely love it. It makes this otherwise almost perfect knife pretty darn perfect. It's not perfect because I want this to be situated up here, and I actually don't have a problem with a stainless steel blackened clip versus a Zytel. I just wish they would have repositioned here. But with this modification, the Cold Steel Voyager is an outstanding, lightweight, strong, super fast, tight locking, razor sharp cutting tool that you can use for EDC or defensive tasks. It's
It's a little bit on the pricey side. I'd like to see cold steel come down on their price, but I highly recommend it. It's very light at 3.6 ounces. Nothing fancy. See you soon.